Well, hello, everybody. It's Tim Green with Rattle Magazine. Welcome to your critique of the week. It is Friday, April 15th. Hope you're having a good one. As always, the point of the critique is to give that workshop experience to people who might not have access to it otherwise. So please, if you do have access to a workshop, you have more access, which is more of a good thing, is never bad. So, as always, what we're going to do is read poems, 2 poems each by 2 poets, and we're going to comment as much as possible. And so leave comments in the chat windows. I'll pass along a bunch of them. And the poets will be able to look at both these streams on Facebook and YouTube and see the chats as well. And learn as we go along about poetry. We'll see what you think, what you like, what you don't, what works, what doesn't. And really, it's a chance to get to see an actual audience of readers that are strangers that don't know you and see what they actually think about your poems and how they can be improved. So that's what we're trying to do here. And it's a lot of fun every Friday. So if you'd like to submit to the Critique of the Week, of course, just go to our submittable page. There's a submittable category there that's the Critique of the Week, and you just have to fill out that and submit 2 poems that way. And then I draw them. I used to do a random drawing live right here. I haven't been doing that. I've just been kind of randomly selecting them myself and not taking up the time on the show. I'm not sure if that was fun or not, but we'll see. But today we have 2 poets. Of course, the 2 poets are Adrian Pilon, if I'm saying that right, I hope so, and Marianne, Lyon. And Marianne sent 3 poems. I think we'll probably just get to 2. But if we have time, we can do 3 as well. So let's see who. Dick Westheimer's here. Hey, Dick. Nate Jacobs here. Christine Forbes. Veena Kumar. Before we start, there's a poll at rattle.com/poll. And if you want to talk about changing the times for the show, possibly. And so far, there are about 100 responses. And at first, it was very even. First, it took Westheimer's suggestion, actually. I made a check boxes instead of radial buttons. And then then nothing was really distinguishing itself, except for that you like Sunday better than Monday for the show. But so I switched it back to radio buttons so you can only pick your favorite, to kind of force you to pick your favorite. And when I do that, now the regular time that we've been doing Sundays at noon Eastern is winning pretty handily. So I think that might be everyone's favorite time. For the Critique of the Week, the best time is later on Friday. But Howard Debs pointed out that any Jewish person celebrating Shabbos couldn't participate on late on the evening on Friday. And so I think we probably just stick with the same 2 times. But if you haven't filled out the poll yet and would like to fill out the poll, I'd love to see the responses keep coming in. I'm always curious just to what people think and what works best for everybody. So go to rattle.com/poll and fill it out if you haven't yet. Okay, let's dig into these poems. Oh, let me just make sure. I got to make sure that Facebook is working first. Let's see. Forgot to go over there. Yeah, we got a bunch of people on Facebook. So Tana Castle's here, Kashyana Singh, Susan Naimi, Pater O'Donoghue, Jenny Middleton, Joe Barca, Sharon Frente, Mark Gritty are over on Facebook. Good to see you all. Okay, let's dive into these poems. They're 2 good-looking poems. I mean, you can tell a lot of times if the poets kind of know what they're doing just at a distance. And these poets look like they know what they're doing, but I haven't read them yet. It's one of those weeks. So it's sort of like the submission experience. We get to read for the first time all together, as if we were editors almost. But let's go and check out this poem. This is Adrian Pilon with Jamaica. Evening in Rocha Rios, the orange ball of sun lowers, mellowing. Lavender creeps in the edges of the sky. The bartender is mixing a tropical cocktail, colors layered in glass to mimic the sunset. My boyfriend is urging me to drink as another vacation day winds down. The colors of the drink are nothing like a tombstone, but the lavender makes a sad note. The disappearing sun is sadder still. The world alit, then gone dark in an instant. A brief storm passes through today. A brief storm passed through today. There's no evidence that rain ever pounded the shore, that lightning struck the ground where resort guests dance in the sand. Fiery torches making skeletons from their shadows. Long-legged crabs scuttle between their bone legs, scurrying to hide under lounge chairs. I hadn't understood how the heavy beat of reggae echoed the heaviness of the tropical air, Wake up and alive, sings Bob. And I'd never heard before the sad throb, the sorrow embedded in those lines. Hadn't known how hard it was to breathe the thick air that gathered before a storm, how it weighed everything down. I couldn't remember why we were in Jamaica. My father had been dead some 30 days. I hadn't realized that his ghost would not be in Jamaica, that it might have been too far to travel after an already long journey. In the daytimes, while snorkeling, there were moments of wonder and fear. Under the surface of the water, a nether space between breathing and death, was a world filled with creatures whose names were unknown to me, who swam around me in reds and yellows and blues and oranges. Hundreds or thousands of translucent white jellies made a wall I had to pass through to get to the other side of more water. They stung me everywhere. They stung me everywhere. Where was I? Sorry, something's in the way. Okay. They stung me everywhere. They stung me everywhere. But my eyes and mouth, those gaping holes, from the narrowest of caves came a fearsome eel, who showed me his open mouth. I could not distinguish the black maw of his jaw from the black maw of the cave. I could not look away, could not stop seeing that abyss, that endless dark, spiraling down. I believe, yeah. So that is Jamaica. A very good, I was transported there. That's the first thing that comes to mind. I mean, especially, I feel like the poem really takes off when we get the this transition here. Not here. Where was it? Where the father, yeah, I couldn't remember why we were in Jamaica. This is like the transitions point where it really, I mean, the purpose of the poem comes to life. It is one of those float like a butterfly, sting like a bee, or rope-a-dope poems or whatever, where, we settle in and then, it sort of lulls us into like just watching the scenery. And then we realize that it's actually about something and it sort of hits us. And that transition right here. And so from this point on, I was really engaged and loved it. I felt like this transition maybe came too late. I felt like the descriptions here went on a little too long without, it held my attention because they were, well described. But I was starting to think in the back of my head as I was reading this, like, God, I hope this goes somewhere, And I think it could be probably cut in half. So what I would probably do to balance this out is just think about, the poem from an arc perspective. And it feels like it wants to be, if this paragraph were half the length and we combine these two stanzas into one, so it would end up two stanzas about this size. I think that's what we'd be looking at for the best possible shape or way this poem could progress. That's how it felt to me anyway, reading it. So what I would work on is trimming out stuff that's unnecessary here so we get to this really great transition a little faster. And then once we do, this like idea of searching and the father's death and then the snorkeling, which is great. I mean, I've never been snorkeling, but that was really vivid and alive and you could feel the emotion there too. So I love this and the way that it connected metaphorically to the actual subject matter. So I love the second half of the poem, especially. The first half just seemed to be going on too far. Let me see what people are saying, and then we'll go sort of line by line a little bit more. Yeah, so Padre Downey says the same thing. I really like this, but then too long. Should it end after an already long journey? And so Jacob says too, and I think they were saying it before they heard me say it, so it's all the same opinion. It took too long to get to the turn from vacation to morning. I like the poem enough to finish, but the vacation part went too long when the value in it is the suddenness and danger of it all. Exactly, yeah. And Bronwyn Rian Drew says the same thing, too long. Joe Barca says a lot of words, some trimming needed. Yeah, so those are comments on Facebook. And over on YouTube, let's see. Jimmy Papa says, I like that a lot. Was involved throughout. So yeah, so Jamaica. Let's go line by line and see like what we can trim. And just think of that as we go through the first, because I don't know if anything should be trimmed from the second half. I'll think about that again reading through, but I felt engaged. There's a drama there in the second half that isn't really present in the first. So I was engaged reading it the first time in every line in the second half. I didn't really feel like I wanted to cut things, but maybe we'll see. Let's read through it one more time and sort of trim some things out. Yeah, and Clayton Clark says, too, I agree with Tim, too long in the beginning, love the ending, the maw of the eel and the cave, great images. And Dick Westheimer, too. I agree with Tim. Part of it is all double descriptors. Orange ball, sun mellowing, for example. Yeah, so let's go line by line. Jamaica. Evening in Ocho Rios, the orange ball of sun lowers, mellowing. Yeah, so Dick already pointed this out, but the orange ball of sun is kind of redundant. So I would, we don't need to know the sun is orange. And mellowing, mellowing strikes me as wrong. Because the sun becomes paler the higher it is in the sky, and it's more orange as it lowers. So it's like the opposite of mellowing. It's like intensifying. So I felt like that word was wrong, and that was one thought I had. I kind of left it. I was fine letting it go, but my thought when I saw mellowing was, oh, that's wrong. And having a word that's wrong that early in the poem kind of kicks you out a little bit. Let's see. So I, word choice here. Lavender creeps in the edges of the sky. I'd probably just cut this. Evening, so you can cut all this. Just say evening in Ocho Rios. Lavender creeps in the edges of the sky. Because we already know it's evening. We imagine a sunset. And the lavender creeping in the edges of the sky is the most interesting description of the beginning. So this is the kind of thing we can do. And Dick was saying the same thing as I said that too. That's more compact. Exactly. So you could just, as soon as you say evening, and then you start to say something like lavender creeps, we know the sun's there. We're sort of painting the picture ourselves. You don't need to tell us every little detail in the picture. And so just pick the best ones, the most interesting, like the most striking and memorable. So just start like this. Evening in Ocho Rios, lavender creeps in the edges of the sky. The bartender is mixing a tropical cocktail. So that's much better to jump in that way. I'd probably cut the colors out. You don't need any colors. Layered and glass to mimic the sunset, because we know sunset has colors. So, it's the same kind of thing. My boyfriend is urging me to drink as another vacation day winds down. So we're getting the scene here. So we go from the sunset to the bartender to the couple on vacation. And so there's a nice information dump kind of here where it's unobtrusively done. But we get to know the setup, so that whole who, what, why, where, when, how kind of thing is really getting out front in here. So this is serving some good work. But then we get to the colors of the drink are nothing like a tombstone. The lavender makes a sad note. I think maybe we've had so much color already. There's a shorter way to say this. I would probably shorten that line. But I do like the lavender makes a sad note. I kind of like that. The disappearing sun is sadder still, the world alit. Yeah, maybe I'd keep the colors in the drink. Yeah, maybe I'd keep that whole thing. The disappearing sun is sadder still, the world alit, then gone dark in an instant. A brief storm passed through today. So what would we prefer to keep? Do we want to keep the disappearing sun sadder still, the world alit, then gone dark in an instant? I mean, that's a great metaphor for the father, who's, it's like a foreshadowing thing that's going on there, that pointing that out, that the way the dark comes suddenly, the world alit, the father was alive, and then he wasn't, and the darkness comes back later with the abyss at the bottom of the cave and underwater. So maybe that's worth keeping. A brief storm passed through today. There's no evidence that rain ever pounded the shore, that lightning struck the ground where the resort guests danced in sand. So I tripped over that. I wonder if there's a verb tense thing a little bit. There's no evidence that rain ever pounded the shore, that lightning struck the ground where resort guests danced. Every time I've read it, I wanted to say that was past tense. Is that supposed to be past tense? I mean, I think maybe to highlight the shift to the present, you might want to say now dance if it's present. Fiery torches making skeletons from their shadows. Long-legged crabs scuttle between their bone legs, scurrying to hide under lounge chairs. I'd probably cut these 3 lines here. And just leave it here, and then keep moving forward. So I'd cut these. I hadn't understood how the heavy beat of reggae echoed the heaviness of the tropical air. Wake up and live, sings Bob, and I'd never before heard the sad throb. Again, we get the sad again, which is like a repetitive. I'd probably, cut that, like show don't tell kind of thing. The sorrow embedded in those lines. Hadn't known how hard it was to breathe the thick air that gathered before a storm. How it weighed everything down. I couldn't remember why we were in Jamaica. And that is a great transition. So here again, too, let's see, what would I do? So if we say we ended this, so there's no evidence that rain ever pounded the shore, that lightning struck the ground where resort guests now dance in the sand, maybe? I hadn't known, could we just skip there? I hadn't known how the heavy beat of reggae echoed the heaviness of tropical air. I think we could do that as if it's almost like a false transition. If we do that, and I think that works. Wake up and live, sings Bob, and I never heard before the sad throb, the sorrow embedded in those lines. I think that kind of works. Maybe I wouldn't cut that. Hadn't known how hard it was to breathe, the thick air that gathered before a storm, how it weighed everything down. So this is kind of repetitive. I would cut this section as well. And that's another thing you can cut. I couldn't remember why we were in Jamaica, and then you get this transition. So I think that works much better without these 3 lines. Without these 3 lines. And maybe those are the main ones to cut in this first line here. And maybe that quickens it up enough where we wouldn't have that problem. Because if we just went ahead and understood how the heavy beat of reggae echoed the heaviness of the tropical air, wake up and live, sings Bob, and I never heard before heard the sad throb. I like that rhyme, Bob and throb. The surround embedded in those lines. I couldn't remember why we were in Jamaica. And that's a surprise shift there. I think that works. So Vina Kumar says she likes the and Jimmy Pappas agrees that the fiery torches making skeletons from their shadows. I do like that too, and it does as Vina says, it foreshadows what's coming up. So maybe end here instead and just cut the last 2 lines. The crabs, really, even the first time I read it, the crabs is actually where I felt, the thought in my head was, oh God, I hope this goes somewhere. It was right in the middle of these crabs. Even though the crabs have bones and it makes sense, they're bone legs and that makes sense. But I think we got to find things to cut because it felt too long. It just did. So even, kill your darlings is the thing they say. So we got to find something to kill, just to quicken up to get to this transition faster. My father had been dead some 30 days. I hadn't realized that his ghost would not be in Jamaica, that it might have been too far to travel after an already long journey. In the daytimes, while snorkeling, there were moments of wonder and fear. Under the surface of the water, a nether space between breathing and death, was a world filled with creatures whose names were unknown to me, who swam around me in red. So now we get the drama, and the description just has a lot more meaning because we know the situation. Like we're in sort of a dramatic space of heightened meaning. And so the descriptions take on that meaning and sort of have a lot more like resonance because we know the actual dramatic situation that we're living within. So here, nothing feels cuttable to me. I would at least so far. Let me keep going though, because I'm really engaged with this. And we get the blues and oranges and yellows again. Where was I? Under the surface of the water, another space between breathing and death, was a world filled with creatures whose names were unknown to me, who swam around in reds and yellows and blues and oranges. Hundreds or thousands of translucent white jellies made a wall I had to pass through to get to the other side of more water. Again, great description. I just love that. They stung me everywhere, but my eyes and mouth, those gaping holes from the narrowest of caves, came a fearsome eel, who showed me his open mouth. I could not distinguish the black maw of his jaw from the black maw of the cave. I could not look away, could not stop seeing that abyss, that endless dark spiraling down. And I like that. So I like that. Yeah, so I think this is a great poem if you just shorten up the beginning so it doesn't sort of spin its wheels for a while, getting to the point. Let's see. Mark Grenier over on Facebook says, great description. Nate Jacob, I like the progression from sky to beach to underwater. The actual fall into an abyss is great. Great ending, says Joe Barca. A lot more people on Facebook than YouTube today, which is strange. Usually it's the other way around. I guess it's usually even is what it is. Love the line, I couldn't remember why. Yeah, we already talked about that, but that's just such a great transition. I couldn't remember why we were in Jamaica. And a lot of times, we talk about this a lot, but there's a strange way, and some of the simplest lines, the simplest and most direct and conversational lines, are like the best lines in a poem sometime. Just because the simplicity of the language has a whole new meaning, and there's some of the contrast of that, maybe. Or just the honesty that we're responding to, the directness, like there's no BS coming our way for once in our lives, like this is the truth, stripped bare, and we're drawn to that because that's the kind of thing we're drawn to is social narrative creatures. So that's a great line. That's a great transition. The oops, a little too down, but I couldn't remember why we were in Jamaica. The simplicity of that was just great. Let's see. That's interesting. So Potter King Badger O'Donohue says, hey Tim, what would be the chances of seeing the poems in advance? Sometime us mere mortals need to read a couple of times to be prepared. Or would that spoil the spontaneity? I don't know. So what do you think about that? I mean, one of the things, there's that whole thing about worries about things being published, and what counts published. We keep talking about because it just keeps coming up. That's one of the things. So one of my arguments for why that you should still be able to publish poems when they're shown, especially rough drafts, but just any poem, is that it's a video format. And that's really different than text. So that's one of the reasons. Also, it's not searchable. So people wouldn't find it unless they're watching the Critique of the Week. So there are a lot of reasons why, if we posted them, they would go away. And I think the argument would be stronger that it counts as publication, although I would like to call them preprints in everything that we do that's not printed in by a press, to be called a preprint, like social media and stuff. I mean, we just have different opinions about that. But anyway, so that's one of the reasons why we can't do that. I also like the spontaneity. I don't know how everyone feels. And we spend like 15, 20 minutes over each poem. We read them twice, and they're on the screen the whole time. So I don't know. So let me know what you think. If anybody likes that idea, maybe we'll explore it further. But anyway, let's continue. Let me see if there's any other comments before I go to the next poem. The next poem is shorter from Adrienne. Nate Jacob says, great movement. Just trim the work it takes to get me there in the beginning. Francine Witt says, I might change whose names were unknown to me. I didn't know. Mark Grinish says, this is a great poem in Jamaica. And Joe Barker says, I like the spontaneity. Yeah, I mean, one of the reasons why I do it this way is because I think it's kind of fun. Like it's really fun to read submissions. And a lot of people don't realize how fun, having no idea what's coming up and seeing it in this way. And it's kind of a fun part of the job, and that maybe it's like the one fun part of the job that no one gets to experience unless they're an editor. So this is kind of a way to do that, to share that fun with everybody else of having no idea what's coming. And then you turn a page and bam, it's a whole new poem. Who knows what it is? And it might be amazing. It might not work at all. Who knows? That's kind of fun. So anyway, we got to move on. Let's go to, so first poem, of course, was Jamaica. This is Adrian Pilon. And this is air travel is a kind of optimism. And as you see, it's much shorter. Air travel is a kind of optimism. On the dawn flight to California, we tried rewinding time, the sun rising behind us, the plane flying backwards into the day. The clouds caught all the light, those rococo colors of rosy-fingered dawn, shades of groundless hope, pink-tinged yellow, sun-daisy yellow, snowbound white, flash of silver wings in the morning. Cherubic flight attendants spirited coffee and pillows to passengers, our charioteer marked on borders, clocks, other ephemera. Too tired to sleep, we tried photographing the cloud beds as we passed over the tip-tops of invisible mountains, no river of woe in sight. And then we dipped, spilled out from the firmament, found ourselves earthbound again, stunned to return to gravity's grip. For all the wonder, our landing was too late. We never felt the wind in our faces. There's air travel, a kind of optimism. Air travel is a kind of optimism. And so I don't know. So this poem, to me, it feels like it feels like maybe I'm reading, maybe it's because I just read all the chapbooks over the last couple of weeks, but I'm feeling in terms of that, like it feels like a continuation of the last poem, like it would be the last poem in a book about this trip to Jamaica while the father, after the father died. And that is the thing, like you're grieving, and you set up a trip months in advance, and and then you're in a sad part in your life, but then the trip is still there, and do you postpone it? Do you go and try to find a place? So it would make a cool book, and this feels like one of like a piece in the book. But if I was just reading this poem on its own, I'm not sure if I would, get it without that context. Like our landing was too late. Let's see. So just about the last question, Jenny Middleton says, I like reading the poems live. Sometimes I wish I could scroll back, but that's a different issue. I think reading poems live is a very real experience. Comments are genuine first reactions. Then, yeah, I think so. Okay. Yeah, I agree with that too. Because this is the reading experience as well. And we sort of get to share a reading experience as we would encountering a poem somewhere. We get to do that in real time, which is kind of the fun part of the fun of it. So Joe Parker says not really a story. Pat O'Donohue says some nice lines, but I'm not interested. Maybe, yeah, that's kind of my takeaway. So I was trying to get at that by saying, in the context of the book, if it were a series of poems, I think it would work is sort of a movement forward in the plot, and kind of or maybe like a resolution even. It could be the last poem in the book, but it kind of implies that the situation. And I think you don't. And I think this is, for probably flying back to California from Jamaica. But we know that only because we read the last poem. Nate Jacobs says, great last line, but it doesn't quite hit. Almost like it had sorry, it's moving too fast. I got to put the slow on. Great last line, but it doesn't quite hit. Almost like I had a great idea for a line, but couldn't quite connect it within the poem. Keep writing this. So let's see. So let's look a little closely. On the air travel is kind of optimism. I like the title. Did someone say they don't like the title? I think I saw that. So Benjamin Barr doesn't really like the title. I kind of like the title. Air travel is a kind of optimism. I think that opens you up to the possibility of what might be coming in an interesting way. It's almost like its own little epigram type statement. So there's a lot contained there. I kind of liked it. On the dawn flight to California, we tried rewinding time, the sun rising behind us, the plane flying backwards into the day. See, I like the start of that. I like the title and I like the opening. Thinking that of flight as time travel when you're flying west, going back in time is kind of an interesting way to put it. It's a nice way to frame that experience. Clouds caught all the light. Those were cocoa colors of rosy-fingered dawn. I think here I get too bored with the descriptions. That's the first time I'm sort of taken out of the poem. Dawn shades of groundless hope, pink tinged yellow, sun daisy yellow. Is it just me? When I start to get colors described in a list, I start to get really bored. But maybe that's just a little quirk of my own. But like I start to feel like, oh, here come some colors. They're usually just not interesting, and that kind of happens here. There's the attempt at making the lists of colors interesting. But colors are kind of just colors. But maybe other people feel differently. I don't know. Flash of silver wings and new morning. Cherubic flight attendants spirited coffee and pillows to passengers. Our chariot remarked on borders, clocks, other ephemera. So I think I'm still just not really engaged up to here. Too tired to sleep. So maybe So it kind of comes back where I'm enjoying the poem again here. Too tired to sleep. When we come back to stop describing the scene at the window and the flight attendants and things, and go back to the self. Too tired to sleep. I become engaged again. And yeah, so Sharon Friendly says maybe just one color, not too many. Yeah, and I think maybe if these lines were just condensed into one line, and then you just moved on instead of like lingering there for so long. Too tired to sleep, we tried photographing the cloud beds as we passed over the tip-tops of invisible mountains, no river of woe in sight. See, I like the invisible mountains and the way that you can't see what's underneath, I think, and that could maybe even be developed a little more. I like that idea, no river of woe in sight. And then we dipped, spilled out from the firmament. I like that phrase too. Found ourselves earthbound again, stunned to return to gravity's grip. Again, here, similarly to the mellowing of the lowering sun, that didn't feel quite right to me because you still feel gravity on the plane. I mean, you're not floating in space on SpaceX or something. You're still being pulled down into your seat, and it doesn't really feel like you don't grip gravity. Maybe I'm being too literal there, but I thought that for a second. Like, is that really right? And you don't want people thinking, is that really right when you're reading a poem? So maybe that line needs to be a little different. For all the wonder, our landing was too late. We never felt the wind in our faces. See, so I don't know. For all the wonder, our landing was too late. Yeah, I don't know. I don't feel like I know what's going on here. Our landing was too late for what? I think there's more poem there that's not told. So again, that's why it felt to me like if it was the last poem in a book or in a chapter or a section of a book, it would work because we'd know all the stuff that was leading into this. Too late for what? But maybe, does anybody else get that line where I don't? And some people said they liked the attempt at the ending. Let's see. And also too, yeah. So Francine Witt points out, not sure who the we is without referencing the previous poem. Yeah, exactly. So the we too. It's not just the too late, but the we. So we're a little lost. Who and what? Late for what and who are we? Joe Barker says vague ending. Sharon French says I could tell more in the beginning. And Adrienne is here, and she says, yes, this poem is too oblique. Yeah, so I think there's more story here, and it just feels like, and that's the weird thing. It's the way that publishing works, Like if you were just writing for the sake of a book, you might not even want to change that. But because we publish poems sort of individually or in little groups before we publish a book, usually, you kind of can't do that. Like the demands of a single poem by itself are different than a series of poems, and so it's so I don't know, it's always tricky to figure out what to do with that kind of problem. You could submit clusters of poems to magazines that publish more, in Rattle we publish clusters of poems sometimes when the poems are great and they're necessary to, there's several poems that there are several poets over the years, and probably once a year we'll publish like 3 or 4 poems by one poet in a row because they kind of fit together. But we don't do it that much. But a magazine like American Poetry Review, they always publish. Like when they take your poems, if they do, they take like 7 or something. So like submitting to places like that do cluster poems is something good to know if you're doing this. And maybe you can get away with not expanding. But Adrienne is here, and she says opaque rather, it needs a substantial revision. So maybe she agrees too. And yeah. And so Bronwyn Drew says here, could serve as a bridge between poems and a chapbook. Yeah, that's how it feels. It feels like it's functioning, it's serving a function in a series of poems where we know who the we is and who the landing is. So I don't know. So anyway, so these are really good books though. I'm interested in, if I had these 2 books or 2 poems, I'd be interested in reading the rest of the book. So it's a good way to be. I think this one, though, doesn't stand alone, as well as the Jamaica, which is really, really close to done, just needs to be, trimmed up in the beginning so we get to the end quicker. Okay, let's move on to the next poet, because it's 9:36 my time. And the next poet, and then we have 3 poems. I don't think we're going to get to all 3. This is Marianne, Lyon. And the first poem she sent is One Sunshine Morning. Let me get a drink of coffee for a second here. Okay. Let me look at the comments, make sure I didn't miss anything. Okay, so the people kind of agreeing. Let's see, over on YouTube. Dick Westheimer says, dependent clauses, too tired to sleep in poems often drop me out of the poem. That's a good point, too. Yeah. Too tired to sleep. Okay, let's move on. So this is Marianne Lyon, One Sunshine Morning. One winter morning, her liquid voice tilts a childhood song inside my heart. You are my sunshine, she croons. I want to feel your warm grin, she pleads. I have forgotten how to laugh, giggle, twirl a polka, tickle under a chin, I say. She mists away, but my only sunshine walks me through my day, limping along with boredom. I hear, you make me happy when skies are gray. You'll never know, dear, how much I love you. And I ask myself, what have I done with my sunshine? Where is it hiding? Don't know how it happens, but I start to mouth those twinkling words she intoned, start to excavate my closeted singing voice. My lips part, and I feel a warm crease on either side. Maybe I could sing for my neighbor's time-worn face. I rehearse another verse an octave lower. Maybe tomorrow I'll sing to her who wears loneliness like a shroud. So that is our One Sunshine Morning. And I feel a little lost in this poem because we don't really get those we don't get the sense of context. So I'm sort of grabbing at things. I feel when I read a poem like this, in a lot of poems, it's a very common thing. I feel like I'm kind of like tumbling down a mountain, or trying to grab at like trees and limbs to like stop myself from falling. Almost like I'm trying to grab at every little item I can see. Like, who's the she? Where are we? Like what's going on here? Just to try to figure out, to like make sense of it, so I can like stop falling and then get my feet on the ground and then enjoy the poem. And that's kind of the experience of it when it's a little lost. So, one winter morning, her liquid voice lilts a childhood song inside my heart. So whose liquid voice? And maybe is One Sunshine Morning a song that I don't know, and that maybe it's just my ignorance, and I would sort of enter the poem more quickly. But Sharon Friend says, "As she listened to a song." Branwyn, Rhiannon and Drew says, "Very lost in this. What's happening?" So Peter O'Donoghue says, "I hate that song." So maybe it is a song that we just don't know. Oh wait, well they sing "My Only Sunshine." So is that a different song? Is that called One Sunshine Morning? Yeah. And Nate Jacobs says, "I'm lost in the pronouns." Let me look it up. Is One Sunshine Morning the name of that song? I thought it was "You Are My Sunshine." Let's see. One Sunshine Morning. Or is that just the title? Yeah, so I don't think that's the song title. Yeah, the title is just "You Are My Sunshine" by Jasmine Thompson, I guess. So when we get to this part, we don't know what One Sunshine Morning is. So we're lost there. As Nate Jacobs says, we get lost in the pronouns and like who's doing what, and it's just hard to figure out. I like the topic of the poem though. One of the things that I like lament all the time is that there's not enough like happiness in poems. It's really, poems tend to be like problem solving tools for like making sense out of things that don't make sense. Like that's kind of how we use poems. And so they end up being negative and dark a lot more often than they end up being positive and light. Like you're not really compelled to explore the reasons behind your happiness because you're like too busy being happy. And so having a warm feeling over something isn't something poets tend to explore. So it's really nice to see that taken on in a poem. So that's one thing that's great about this. But I'm just feeling too lost in it. So one winter morning, her liquid voice lilts a childhood song inside my heart. You are my sunshine, she croons. I want to feel your warm grin, she pleads. I have forgotten how to laugh, giggle, twirl a polka, tickle under a chin, I say. Is that, let's see, you are my sunshine. So the fact, I guess part of the problem here, you are my sunshine is a lyric she's crooning. But then someone says, I want to feel your warm grin. And that's a statement that's not in the song. Is that part of the, I have the lyrics up. I want to feel your warm grin. Is that a lyric in the song? No, so that's not a lyric in the song. Yeah, so who's saying that? I'm a little lost about like who? Like there's one she and then there's another she. I have forgotten how to laugh, giggle, twirl a polka, tickle under her chin, I say. She mists away, but my only sunshine walks me through my day limping along with boredom. Yeah, so who is the she? The she is the singer. And I guess it's Jasmine Thompson. I'm not sure if I'm saying if that's right. That's just what's up there on Google. But so is this what like she is telling us with the song lyrics? Like is that like the message she's pleading with, or is this a different person? And yeah, so I think it's the same person. I think this is what she's saying with her song. You know, that's the message that the song is giving. And then she fades away once the song stops. But my only sunshine walks me through my day, limping along with boredom. I hear you make me happy when skies are gray. So the song's like stuck in the speaker's head. You make me happy when skies are gray. You'll never know, dear, how much I love you. And I ask myself, so, and also when you quote the song, especially when the song is so well known, like we know when you say, you make me happy when skies are gray, we already know, like everybody's heard the song probably. I mean, probably 80% of people listening have heard this song. And so you know the next line, is going to be that. So it's just telling you something you know. And one trick you can do is to take advantage of that. And like if you say you make me happy when skies are gray, you're implanting the next line in our head by doing that. And you can play with that by saying some kind of different variation of the line, like a little wink that that you put that in our head. But saying the thing that it's already in our head feels redundant already before it even comes, kind of. And I ask myself, what have I done with my sunshine? Where is it hiding? Don't know how it happens, but I start to mouth those twinkling words she intoned, start to excavate my closeted singing voice. My lips part, and I feel a warm crease on either side. Maybe I could sing from my neighbor's time-worn face. And so the neighbor comes in too very late. I rehearse another verse an octave lower. Maybe tomorrow I'll sing to her who wears loneliness like a shroud. So the poem seems to come, alive in this, right around here. The what have I done with my sunshine is another transition. It's another pivot point in the same way that in the first poem, that line about I don't remember why we were in Jamaica is a pivot point. And so the poem kind of really starts here. And everything that happens above it could be condensed and just, this song is stuck in my head. And that's kind of the only message you need to get across. But then this whole thing about the neighbor and the loneliness like a shroud is much more interesting. And I feel like the poem actually lives there in the way that I'm driven to sing and what it does to other people and myself. So I think that's like sort of more the topic. Let me see what people are saying. And so Mark Ritter says the lonely neighbor needs to be introduced early up in the poem, I think. So Jenny Middleton says, I agree, it's a fairly cliched, annoying song, which is what Peter O'Donoghue said. He says, you are my sunshine, my only sunshine. You make me happy, puke when skies are gray. I know the song, You're My Sunshine. I'd start the poem at the fifth line. This is Attractive Fahey says at the fifth, which would be right here. But then who am I saying it to? The whole structure of the poem is sort of it sort of leaves us unnecessarily lost, I think. So what if like you just start out with like describing just the feeling of having that song in your head and like uplifting your mood. Like what if the poem just started there and then you find yourself singing and then the neighbor comes in and then we hear about the neighbor in a little more detail. I think that maybe is the shape that would work a little better for this poem. Marianne Carr says, can half of one's poem be lyrics of someone else's work? Yeah. I mean, I don't know how fair use and copyright law works in other countries, but in with the Copyright Act of 1976, which is the one that's applicable now, anybody can sue you for any usage. So you kind of have to be careful because of that, because we live in a litigious society. But I think you would win a fair use case as long as the work has to be, the thing you're creating has to be transformative. You have to be making something new out of the original. It has to be not taking away the value of the original. And so that's basically it. There's 4 factors that determine that. And so if you have half the poems or lyrics, but then you transform it into something else, and it's not taking away the value of the actual song, then you're pretty good with a fair use claim. Although this is not professional legal advice, I'm not a lawyer, but but that's how it generally works. So let's see. Sharon Fuentes says she's feeling the song, I think, in her own life. Benjamin Barr says, yes, she and I are 2 people. And Peter O'Donoghue says, nice last line. Yeah, I feel like the heart of the poem is really in this ending. And I think that it just hasn't it's almost like we were writing to get to what we really wanted to write about, which happens very often. And then when we find what we want to write about, we have to kind of cut away the scaffolding that got us there and then really explore like the nuances of the surface of the wall up there or something to finish that metaphor. You have to like dig into what you found that's worth digging out. Let's see. Yeah, Jamie says, I think the people mentioned needs to be less vague and the relationships to the narrator more clear. Laurel Bennett says, the question for me is, why is this song in particular important to the speaker? What's at stake? Even in a joyful poem, we need the deeper level. Yeah, exactly. And what's at stake is down here. It's just not spread out yet. Let's see. Dick Westover points out, yeah, You're My Sunshine is such a dark song. It is. It's very ironic and sad. Jamie Papa says, I think there are rules about using song lyrics. I think you need permission. I mean, the thing is, and actually, weirdly, my dad worked for ASCAP, and so his job was to go around finding people, making them sign up for ASCAP, kind of to avoid being sued for copyright infringement. Let's see. But there's nothing special about songs. Intellectual property is intellectual property. It's just that they make enough money that they can hire lawyers to sue you. Let's see. So Vinay Kumar says, my main confusion is the age of the eye, a child or an adult. So I think it's an adult looking back at the childhood. So here, I have forgotten how to laugh. So the I have forgotten is the key part. So it's an adult saying, I used to just have joy, and I've forgotten this, like this feeling of twirling in a polka or tickling under a chin. So it's an adult looking back at childhood. So Dick Westheimer says the song is about the pain of an unfaithful partner leaving. Kathy Gibbons, Forsaken. Maybe you could address that with a title. Okay. Well, let's see. So Peter O'Donoghue says, I can imagine the song in a David Lynch film, in a drunken suicide scene. All right. Thanks, Potter. Let's move on to the next poem. And I don't know, what should we do? We want to do it's a place, a poem, a stink, a grating noise, a quality of light? Or do you want to read where the boundary invisibly bisects a strand of deep brush, choke cherry, popple, stunted oak, he waits? Those are both very interesting titles. I don't know. Let's do the second one. This is where the boundary invisibly bisects a strand of deep brush, choke cherry, popple, stunted oak, he waits. The he waits is interesting. There's a star there. It's adapted from the first line from La Rose by Louise Erdrich. Yeah, there's some cool titles. Like contented cat abides by local creek environs, peopled with pages of berry whiffs, familiar wind moves, leaves, gutturals, talking frogs, weaved mellow willows. I build his noble face, study wide-set eyes given to utter dreaming. Fishing basket lays open on weedy shore, crickets sweeten his ears, muscled arm aches or arches, hand-tied fishing pole dances a back step, fly touches soft ripple. I imagine him sauntering home, confident stride, up beloved alley, entangled with whooping kids, junky cars on stilts. He swings his bulging basket, trout tails jut out, latched top. I rush to him, imitate. I can't put this. Sorry, my wallet is like I left it on the table. I rush to him, imitate his perky stride. I can see the stained berry juice painted on his earnest lips. We reach fragrant backyard. Birds sing in lilac bush. Purpled bunches bounce, giggling boughs. Their trampoline. He strides through exploding garden. It happens every sacrosanct summer. Provides our meatless Friday dinner. Bemused mom waits at open door. So interesting. So this is one of those poems where the articles and things have been stripped out. And my advice almost always is to put them back in and to not pare a poem down by taking out the articles and things like that, because it makes they're the function words that hold, they're the glue that holds other language together. And they're words that are generated in Broca's area. They're involuntary aspects of language. And they're like the glue that binds everything together, and they serve a lot more purpose than we kind of think. And so missing them feels very stilted and strange and hard to follow in a way. Like the music kind of goes away without those function words. And so I wouldn't, unless you're trying to get this sort of stilted, strange feel. Sometimes you can do that in a way that it works, but in most cases I wouldn't do that. And I think here it detracts from the poem as well. So I'd put those back. Yeah, Potter O'Donoghue again says the function words have a function, exactly. And that was before I think I was even saying anything about it. Francine Witt says, I agree, the style overtakes the content. And yeah, so put those back and let us just enjoy the music of speech, which is a deeply felt natural thing that we all have an ear for. And then too, even though I love the title, and I'm curious how it's adapted from this book, but where the boundary visibly bisects a strand of deep brush, and so here we have the articles, a strand of deep brush, and feel how much more that flows, you know. Choke cherry, popple, stunted oak, he waits, and there's a really interesting like curiosity about the he waits, like who waits, and when it happens that fast, it makes me curious rather than lost. So at first it works. We just have to like learn it or be shown a little bit about it. But I like it there. That makes me intrigued and want to read this poem. Like contented cat, like a contented cat abides by the local creek. You know, like just put those back. Environs peopled with pages of berry whiffs, familiar wind-moved leaves. See, I like a lot of these lines and phrases. Familiar wind-moved leaves. I like the way that sounds. Guttural talking frogs, weaved mellow willows. I build his noble face, study wide set eyes, given to utter dreaming. So we have the I all of a sudden. We have the he. So we don't really know who's speaking. And all of a sudden we have an I, but we don't know the relationship between the I and the he. So I don't know what the poem is about again. Again, I'm lost. Again, I'm in that feeling where I'm grasping at things as I tumble down the hill, trying to catch myself before I die. And I'm not sure, everything I grab, sort of, I grab it and then I lose, it falls with me too, So I build his noble face. So part of me thinks maybe by I build his noble face, we're like creating the character in our mind's eye. Is that what we're doing here in this poem? So and is it this Louise Erdrich's book? I don't know. I mean, that's my guess, but I'm not really sure where we are. Fishing basket, but there's some great lines too. Like there's really interesting writing here. Fishing basket lays open on weedy shore. Crickets sweeten his ears. Again, who is the he? Who's this? Oops. Where was I? His ears, right here. Muscled arm arches, hand-tied fishing pole, dances a back step. I like the dances a back step. There's a lot of phrases I like here. Fly touches soft ripple. I imagine him sauntering home, confident stride up beloved alley. So up his beloved alley or something like that, entangled with whooping kids, junky cars on stilts. So who is I don't know, the relationship between the I and the he is what this poem comes down to, and I just can't resolve it. I'm not sure what's going on. And who is the he? Like, it's almost like a sketch of the he, but I don't end up knowing who the he is. Sharon Frentis' quick and sweet, crickets sweeten his ears is a phrase she likes. Let's see. Mark Grenier says, fishing basket creel. I'm not sure what that means. Creel? Was there a word creel? Fishing basket lays open and weedy shore. Crickets sweeten his ears. I love that phrase too. Muscled arm arches, hand-tied fishing pole, dances a backstep. I like that too. A fly touches soft ripple again. All right, I see. I put the A in by myself, but yeah, but get the articles in here. Imagine him sauntering home, confident stride, up beloved alley, entangled with whooping kids, junky cars on stilts. So here, this was an interesting phrase for me because I was imagining this like a Wind in the Willows scene. And just the way it's described, I imagine like an anthropomorphized frog or something with a fishing pole down by the stream. And creel is a fishing basket. Thanks for explaining that. I didn't know that word. But that was Benjamin explaining. Thanks, Benjamin. But yeah, so I'm imagining like a Wind in the Willows or something. And then we get junky cars on stilts, which is a totally different sort of scene and image and place. It becomes like no longer a cartoon. And I'm like, are we somewhere different? He swings his bulging basket, trout tails jut out, latched top. Again, it's just hard to read. Trout tails jut out, latched top. We need the articles there. I rush to him. Oh, so suddenly here we're, so I was imagining, we're reading a book like The Wind in the Willows or something, and I don't know what La Rose is. But I'm imagining like the I is someone like imagining him based on reading this book. But all of a sudden the I rushed to him, so I'm actually in the story. Imitate his perky stride, can see the stained berry juice painted on his earnest lips. We reach fragrant backyard. Again, there needs an article there. Birds sing in lilac bush, purple bunches bounce, giggling boughs, their trampoline. He strides through exploding garden. Again, articles. It happens every sacrosanct summer, provides our meatless Friday dinner. Bemused mom waits at the open door, and suddenly I think that he is a father. Oops, it's supposed to be a question mark. So that becomes my interpretation. Yeah, and so Mark Grenier says the same thing. Is the I a child and the man a father? Yeah, so in the end it kind of resolves into that. But it starts out really abstract, and it feels like the withholding didn't get us anything, I guess, is. So like we have this sort of almost surreal description of what's going on, but we don't know who. And then the only resolution we get is that we get to figure out that at the end it's probably her father she's talking about. But what does it mean to you? Like what is the emotional impact of this? Like we want to be mining into like the feeling of waiting or what's coming, or the feeling of this memory, the nostalgia or whatever's there. We want to dig in and feel that ourselves. And so having a poem, it's sort of like we're puzzling out through, and then it's finally revealed that we're talking about the father. But what's added to that? Pater O'Donoghue says Meatless Friday is Catholicism. I think it's something to do with that, yeah. So the father goes fishing every Friday for the meatless dinner. Imitate his stride. But Benjamin Barr says, sounds like a father-son kind of thing. I recall as a young boy trying to keep pace with my dad, and likewise later on with my daughter. Yeah, that's a good point. Imitating his stride sort of foreshadows that. That happened up here, didn't it? Somewhere. Oh yeah, here. I made him sauntering home. Well, where was that? Imitating his stride. Oh, there it is. Imitating. Oh, so it's toward the end. Yeah, Jenny Middleton says there's a religious context associated with eating fish on Friday. Yep, for sure. And so what is that? Like, what is the meaning behind that? Like, why are we writing it? Why are we compelled? A poem is asking the question of why it happened, why it has to be. Like, why was this poem written is sort of what the poem itself is always asking and trying to figure out. And I don't think we get the why the poem is happening, the meaning that underlies all of this stuff. And so I'd say dig deeper. But there's a lot of great lines that I love. So there's a lot of stuff to maintain here. But like, tell the story. Don't hold back. Like, let the story be something that we're given access to, because we love hearing other people's stories. Like, there's no reason to withhold what you're actually talking about till the very end. So that's what I would say. Let's see. Any other comments? Yeah, Vina Kumar says some great lines, and I didn't enjoy the poem, but the he, I, and then mom at the end are confusing. Clayton Clark says great lines, maybe start with a fishing basket. That's a good suggestion there. Yeah, where was the fishing basket? Yeah, and put the articles back, but say, so if the title was just where the boundary invisibly bisects a strand of deep brush, chokecherry, popple, stunted oak, he waits. His fishing, let's start with the article, but his fishing basket lays open on weedy shores, crickets sweeten his ears. So jump right in there. That's a good suggestion. Like, cut this because it's too much description and just jump right in there, right to the he character. Yeah, good suggestion, Clayton. Let's see. And yeah, so Mark Winter says this describes a near idyllic scene from childhood, but the purpose of the poem is unclear. Exactly, like we have is it nostalgia that we're feeling here? Is there something more that I didn't know back then? Like, have I learned something about how significant this was that he went fishing? Like we don't really know why the poem, why the poem is pushing itself out into the world of our imagination. Like why are we drawn to this memory? And that's what we're really curious about as readers. And so that's what you should explore as a writer is that kind of thing. Yeah, ironic that there's this Pater O'Donoghue. Ironic that there's an open door at the end. Let us in, he says. Yeah, exactly. Like, we want to hear the story. I think, what we're drawn to are people's stories. We love hearing people's stories. And so there's really, unless there's a really great reason to hold back, and occasionally there is, like, there's always exceptions to the rule, but in most cases, just tell the story and we'll be much more engaged than if you hide. Like, sometimes you want to gradually reveal, but like hiding things, it doesn't really work. We want to hear the story, and the story almost starts, at the end of the poem, because we finally get to know who the characters are. Okay. And Jenny Milton says, yes, I think the ideas, oops, it bumped. Yes, I think the ideas need to be developed to give a deeper insight into family life and beliefs. Yeah, exactly. Like just explore that. Okay, so we've said the same thing a bunch of times, but that is the critique. So really interesting lines and good writing here, Marianne. So I hope you keep, especially this poem. I think there's definitely a poem here. I just draw it out, tease it out. So we have those two poems from Marianne Lyon today. Then we have the Adrian Pilon poems, Jamaica, and Air Travel is a Kind of Optimism. So 2 good poems there too. Thanks for sharing these as always. It's always a pleasure. I love doing these critiques. It's really fun. And I mean, it actually is. Like, this is what I loved about being in an MFA writing program, and that I get to do it myself every Friday is pretty cool. So thanks you for being here. And it wouldn't work if it was just me sitting here staring at the poems and talking myself. It's all the interaction, which I love, the whole roundtable aspect of it. So thanks for being here, everybody. Now, this week's guest on the Rattlecast is going to be Kate Gale. And note the special time, because this Sunday is Easter Sunday. We moved it to Monday in a totally different time as well. It's Monday, 5 p.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. Pacific, Monday, April 18th. Kate Gale is the guest. Kate Gale is the founder and publisher of Red Hen Press, which is probably the best small press or literary press in Los Angeles. They do great work, publish a lot of the poets that we've had on the show. Kim Stafford was on Red Hen Press, Ron Kershey, a whole bunch of people. So it'll be interesting to talk to her about that, but also her newest book, The Loneliest Girl. She's got a really interesting life story and background too. So it'll be really fun talking to her and getting all that insight. Get your questions prepared if you want to have any questions for a publisher, and see some insight into what her writing is like after reading. She reads almost as much as me because she reads so many book manuscripts. So that is Kate Gale, Rattlecast 140, and the prompt for this week was, I can't remember, I haven't written my poem yet, so I'll have to look it up really quickly. The prompt for this week was, an aphorism is a concise statement that contains a bit of wisdom or wit about life, such as, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, or honesty is the best policy. Write a poem that is either based on an aphorism or contains one or more aphorisms. So that is your prompt for the week, and Kate Gale is your poet of the week. Rattlecast number 140, Monday, not Sunday, Monday, April 18th, 5 p.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. Pacific. Hope to see you then. Hope you have a great weekend in the meantime. If you celebrate Easter, hope you have a good one. If not, hope you have a great weekend anyway, and I will talk to you later. Goodbye.